Rob, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, guys. Out here in Denver waiting for practice to start.
Nice. Let's start with last night. A 2-1 loss to the Ottawa Senators, where the Penguins played well enough to win. And if you heard those post-game comments from Coach Sullivan and Sid, some maybe moral victory in some capacity there. But are fans buying it, or are there real concerns today?
There's concern and there's anger. It's about a week before the trade deadline, the fan base turned on this management team, especially Ron Hextall. And now that things have kind of gone the way they've gone, there's a lot of anger. I mean, there's a whole generation of Penguin fans that came up with the Sidney Crosby era that don't know anything like this. They've only known sustained success, so I'm not even sure they can be expected to handle it. I mean, they've kind of been living a charmed life. But I think there's concern in the room, too. I mean, they're down 4 of their top 6 defensemen right now. They've not been getting any secondary scoring all year. As I like to tell people, they've basically been playing with 6 forwards, 2 defensemen, and no dependable goaltending, which is tough way to live in the NHL. And now one of those defensemen is hurt with Marcus Pettersson. So, I mean, it's a concern, and they've got a gauntlet here this week. They got Colorado tomorrow night. Next night they're in Denver, and then they got the Washington Capitals coming to town Saturday. And even though the Capitals are out of the playoffs right now, that will be a game that the Capitals will have circled.
So how much of this is fans' frustration with management, which happens in all cities, I think, when teams are supposed to be good and miss the playoffs, versus there could be real change? I know ownership there in Pittsburgh changed. I don't know how involved they would be. What is your sense of if there's potential for real change at the higher positions there with the Penguins?
Really good question. It's also a very tough one to answer because it's an ownership group that is different. I mean, this were still the Mario Lemieux-led ownership group, I would say change would be coming. But Fenway Sports Group is, they're not really based in Pittsburgh. I think they're still trying to wrap their heads around what it's like to own a hockey team. This is their first full season as owners.
Yeah.
So, look, missing the playoffs, I think anything but trading Crosby, Malkin, and Letang is on the table. I would think Mike Sullivan is safe because they signed him to a 3-year extension and he had 2 years left coming into this season. But I certainly think you could see a management change. I don't have any intelligence that tells me that's definitely going to happen, but it sort of feels like when the fan base is this angry, if they would miss the playoffs or they would get in and get their doors blown off, you got to start thinking about what your season ticket holders are going to do too.
So Rob, where's the dynamic between Brian Burke and Ron Hextall? When I look at this lineup, and Brian Burke's been there a few years now, it doesn't really shape up to me as a Brian Burke kind of roster through and through. So how has that worked out between the two of them?
I can't really get anybody to tell me what Brian does other than sort of advise. And I mean, Nick, I'm like you. I look at this roster. I look at the moves they made at the deadline, bringing in Mikael Granlund. That's not a Brian Burke type player. So somebody told me last year at the deadline last season that Hextall's the guy in charge. He's the one dictating everything and calling all the shots. So I got to put this at the feet of Hextall. I think this is his team. This is the way he's built it. It's in his vision. If it's Brian Burke, I'll say this. If it is Brian Burke that has a lot of influence, he's doing things that are not consistent with what he's always done in the NHL. And I think you'll agree with me. Berkey's not really one to change his philosophy on what a winning hockey team looks like.
No, I think he's fairly entrenched in his viewpoints about what's successful
we know
in the
him
NHL.
well.